All right, Guru Nation. So, what you're about to watch is from our CRC Academy. Shout out to Monica. She created a really good in the CRC Academy, like internship experience to where students work on a mock study. In the CRA Academy, we have a real study, and we're actually in the process of integrating the two together. But in the CRC currently, there's a mock study, and today I joined as a guest to like grill the interns, guest griller maybe. And we just did like a site selection visit, and it was a fake protocol, but they do a feasibility survey and all this stuff. And while we didn't ask like too many protocol specific questions, I tried to get into some typical traps that CRAs ask when it comes to these site selection visits, whether they're in person or virtual like this one. So I tried to like ask them certain things, and you probably will see like the questions in here. These questions you've heard myself and Monica ask are pretty standard for site selection visits, and they try to trick you with some of these things. They're open-ended, so they let you dig your own grave if you're an inexperienced coordinator and you say the wrong thing. And that's kind of what happened in the beginning here. And then the students recovered. Both students, actually one of the students has a job, you'll see at the end, and the other one's an intern with me, remote intern for my site, Yuma Clinical Trials, Vicky. So shout out to both these students. They did a great job. But we kind of did a mock site selection visit, myself and Monica. Myself and Monica played the role of CRAs in this case, and the two interns played the role of coordinators. So hopefully you find something of value here. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Let us know if you want more of these kind of things. Take care. Bye-bye.
Investigator specialty?
He's a general practitioner. Yeah.
Okay. And is there any sub-investigator in this study that your site has assigned?
Yes, we have Thomas Mello. He's an epidemiologist.
Okay, excellent. Dan, you want to take it from here?
As far as your calibration of your equipment, can you tell me how that process is?
We have 2 centrifuges, and we have once a week that, for example, and the fridge also. Once a week, there is a technician that comes to check that everything is working well. We have daily temperature control, and one of the centrifuges is used different temperatures, and the other one is for frozen samples too.
Okay. And what about how often are they calibrated, the equipment?
Well, they do a general calibration once a month, but we have once a week the technician to come and check.
Once a week? That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Most sites do once a year.
Okay.
So here's an example where you really have to know specifics. And most clinics get their equipment calibrated every year, but some twice a year. I've rarely seen once a week. I've actually never seen once a week. And sorry to ask the hard questions, but this is what I get asked when they do site selection on my site.
Yeah. The other question is how quick is the turnaround of the regulatory documentation for the startup regulatory documentation?
Can you repeat the question?
Well, what is your standard turnaround for the regulatory documents?
The five business days.
Okay, and how about for the budget and contract negotiation?
10 days.
10 days. Okay. Does the site have access to an unblinded investigator? Or have experience with an unblinded investigator?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there is.
Okay.
There might be a blinded and an unblinded portion of this study.
Yes.
The sponsor
sponsor's still gonna let us know, but what's your process for making sure that the blinded staff do not see the documents that the unblinded staff have access to? How do you ensure that they're blind?
This is potentially a really important question that they ask for blinded and unblinded studies. The answer is however you want to set it up. If you're using paper source, typically the books are kept, like the charts are kept in separate locked offices of those blinded and unblinded staff, respectively. If you're using eSource, so this is actually in one of my studies that I have right now, the blinded staff, because we actually have more data to collect, we use eSource, and the unblinded staff use paper source, and the unblinded staff don't have access to the eSource, and then the blinded staff don't have access to the paper source. But every site's gonna have a different answer.
And can you walk me through your process of consent at your site?
So the patient's kept in a private room. Plenty of time is made for the patient to ask questions. The site guarantees that the patient understands all the risks and benefits of the study, and all questions were documented, and the patient is encouraged to take the informed consent home and discuss it with family. The patient is also given a copy of the consent form after they sign it. And again, the most important thing we're looking for is plenty of time, no coercion. Patient understands they can withdraw anytime. This needs to be documented.
And since this is a vaccine study, retention is very important to us. So, especially on the days that you administer the vaccine, patients have to stay there for 8 hours. Do you have a retention strategy in place to make sure that the patients are compliant with this visit?
A retention list?
Yeah, do you have a retention strategy?
Yes, we have a retention list.
So what do you do for the 8-hour visits? Like, how do you plan to keep the patients engaged and compliant, given that it's such a long visit?
First of all, we have an educational explanation about the treatment and how they need to be prepared for that. And then the benefits of the treatment, I think, is very important for them. So I think the main engagement for them will be that, to access something maybe they will not have access, like the vaccine.
But how do you, because it's a long visit when you dose them, our concern as a sponsor is that the patients don't want to stay for the entire 8 hours. Unclear on the retention. How are you going to keep a patient for 8 hours? Because I was asking about the particular long visits, and you were talking about your retention strategy in general, which didn't make sense.
Okay, but now can you explain to us, like, what do you do? Do you put TV, or what do you do for that?
Yeah, you answered
keep the
it well.
patient entertained.
Yeah.
I understood your question as, like, how do you keep the patient on the study, not on the side? So I was like, okay, you have to explain the benefits of the medicine. But you were talking about the 8 hours, like the long stay. Okay.
If you don't have a plan to keep them entertained and also comfortable during 8 hours, probably they won't come back for the next visit.
Are you allowed to? Are you allowed to give them food, for example? Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure.
That's part. Yeah. And then on top of that, something that I want you to always keep in mind is that this is not treatment yet. It's investigation product, because treatment is when it gets approved. Before that, we cannot call it treatment. We can call it investigate product or drug. And also we cannot, I mean, in the inform of consent, mention the potential benefits and the potential risk. So we cannot just talk about, or make it more appealing, talking about the benefits, because our potential is not yet approved in the market.
Okay,
Because
another
there can
question.
be some sort of coercion. Yeah, go ahead.
I imagine they're not allowed to have a companion, like for example, a family member or kids or anything like that.
Depending on the study, but for example, in a study like COVID, probably not.
Okay.
Yeah. Another thing that like in that, you actually asked a good question about the food, because in most of these studies, they're gonna have like some kind of dietary requirement. So because it's PK, so you would actually do good, like if you ask the CRA during the visit, like what about dietary restrictions? Because it will show that you've done it before, or you're at least aware that that's a thing. And also in a study like this vaccine study, there's going to be a lot of PK draws. So I was going to ask, but I didn't want to get too tough on you guys, but I was going to ask if you can accommodate 10 patients at once, who's drawing all the blood like every 20 minutes from each patient? Because if that's just 2 people, that's what, every hour, that's 3 blood draws per patient every hour for 8 hours. So
You're going to be nonstop.
140 blood
We're
draws.
hard workers. We can do it.
But otherwise, you did good. You should just kind of know a little bit about the crash card. The AED is good. I think our crash card has epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine. Those are like typical crash cart items. And there could have been a lot. Like with these studies, they ask a lot of questions based on the specific of the protocol. So like if they already know it's going to be a lot of blood draws, they would have asked you, how is it that only you guys doing the blood draws and you can accommodate 10 patients at once? So you just got to be careful with your answers. But I think you guys did very good. I'm just being very picky.